All right, y'all. So, gonna do just a little bit of a quick Twitter scroll today and cover a few things. I kind of like these type of videos. They're a little bit easier in the sense that I don't have to worry about the recording technology. I'm still working on like a perfect recording technology to capture video and kind of be able to pause and react to that and do analysis in real time. But yeah, we're going to start off taking a look here at Sri Lanka. So there's some crazy shit going on in Sri Lanka, and I think that they're a little bit of a canary in the coal mine in a certain sense. So right now they've got like a crazy food shortage going on, and then it turns out I think right now it's worsening because not only is there a food shortage, but they're starting to have issues with gas to cook with for the food that they do have. So you can see here, there's some pretty wild scenes. These are not individual photos. Yes, they are. So, they're like cooking bread in open fires or something like that. That's not a marshmallow. Some wild scenes. Honestly, this stuff looks almost as crazy as January 6th. I'm not going to say that these people are insurrectionists or anything like that, but so basically though, the reason that this happened and the reason that I want to talk about it, I've actually got a video planned in the works on the Sri Lanka situation, comparing it to what happened in Russia during like the early Soviet Union. So the reason that Sri Lanka is having this issue is that last year, for whatever reason, the president or prime minister decided that the country was going to shift to 100% organic agriculture. 100% organic agriculture. And the farmers, he's not a farmer. The president is not a farmer at all. So this is the type of situation where, you've got political elites who have no on-the-ground experience with agriculture making top-down decisions that are obviously now have affected the stability of the entire country. And Sri Lanka does have a history of dealing with color revolutionary type activity, but this specifically is a pretty wild, destabilizing move. So basically what happened is after that rule, the farmers were waiting on their organic fertilizer, and it turned out that all this fertilizer that they got from China, they had contracted with China to provide a bunch of fertilizer, and it had a bunch of chemicals in it and shit, so it wasn't organic. And so instead of accepting the fertilizer and saying, okay, and by the way, now they've gotten rid of it. But instead of accepting the fertilizer at the time and being able to grow shit so they could feed themselves, they denied the fertilizer. They denied to accept it. And so they literally just didn't have enough fertilizer to plant like their normal amount of crops. So I should have had this pulled up before. Recently, I think they kind of pulled back on the ban a little bit, but it was too late. Unfortunately, if you don't get shit in the ground growing, then it doesn't matter if you decide later on, like, oh, we fucked up, sorry guys. No, you can't feed people yet. And I'm not going to pull up the video right now, but one thing that's interesting is that in some of the video coverage, the news coverage of this from this news channel that's based in India, they always refrain to the fact that basically they say, Sri Lanka's agricultural sector accounts for 7% of the nation's GDP. And it's interesting because, when you say 7%, when you express it as a percentage, it seems as though it's not the biggest deal. Like, oh, it's 7% of their GDP. Well, maybe they can make that up some other way. But while it might only be 7% of their GDP, it's a much higher percentage. Agriculture is a much higher percentage of do we have food to eat this year. So, it could be as high as 100. I'm sure they import a good amount of food. I think they export a lot of spices. But, yeah. So, anyways, at some point I will put out a little video on Sri Lanka covering this. I mean, literally, it's gotten so crazy that people like tried to rush the president's house like last week. So, shit keeps happening so quickly that it's kind of hard to like cover the issue. But I even actually made some Sri Lankan curry, which is a dish that I've enjoyed making for a few years now, and I've got some footage of that to use as like B-roll in the background of discussing the news. But anyways, we're going to jump into the hyper reality that is Twitter. So, in past months, when I was kind of like spewing a lot of this information into the void on Facebook, I would discuss hyper reality, and oftentimes I would mention that Twitter is the forefront of the Orwellian narrative. And I definitely think that's the case. So I came across this article or subject today about this is a little hyper reality take. It's a new type of cigarette that helps you smoke less, and it debuts in stores this week amid some controversy. So the controversy is probably the idea that they're selling you a product and telling you that you're going to use the product less. But basically, you can see here the product has 95% less nicotine, and so it's not really helping you smoke less. You're smoking just as many cigarettes. You're probably going to smoke more cigarettes. But if anything, like the best case scenario with this product is that you get accustomed to, you're just as addicted to a smaller dose of nicotine. But anyways, just think about this, right? This is hyper reality. A lot of it has to do with advertising. Advertising has a layer of information on top of objective reality that tells you what a company wants you to know about the product they're producing. And so when you pick up a pack of cigarettes that at the top says help you smoke less, and by the way, this is the FDA. The FDA have authorized them to put helps you smoke less on the box. So you're picking it. So so you get some fucking pack-a-day smoker or multiple pack-a-day smoker, and every time he opens this box of fucking, I shouldn't assume, every time them opens up the box of fucking cigarettes, they're going to see helps you smoke less. And there's just like going to be a cognitive dissonance that's created between the fact that they're definitely still smoking and, that this shit is supposed to help you smoke less. Let's see what people have to say about this. I haven't really taken a look. Look, see, this is, we'll look at some hyper reality in real time. And this is actually pretty funny because this vaxxed and boosted person at least has the, obviously they're fully bought in on the COVID bullshit, but they've at least got the sense to be like, this is a horrible idea. And like I was saying earlier, they're probably going to smoke more to get the nicotine they're missing and still get the carcinogens. And then here you get, this person chugs hyper reality. Black Lives Matter here is saying that a cigarette with less deadly addictive chemicals is a bad thing. And it's just like, no, dude, like it's the smoking of all the other shit. Anyways. Yeah, speaking of the COVID bullshit though, did want to talk about Twitter as the forefront of the Orwellian narrative. And, here we are, 2022, Philadelphia just recently announced that they were going to put their mask mandate back in place because they had like 150 cases one day in a city of like 1 million people. Idiots and fucking, wannabe authoritarians or closeted authoritarians are just fucking yammering to put this shit back on their faces. They've become harmed by facial expressions. When they see people at grocery stores, it makes them emotionally anxious to see people smiling or frowning. And God forbid they see a couple arguing in public with no masks on. The emotions on the faces of the couple arguing in public, that could trigger, that could be a real issue. The argument that some couple is having could be a real issue for someone who isn't, it could cause emotional distress. If a couple was in public arguing loudly at a restaurant and breaking up or something like that, they could cause real emotional distress to the people next to them if they weren't wearing masks properly, because they'd be not smiling, but they'd be making these emotional faces, and who wants to see that in public? No one wants to see that shit. Put a mask on. Fucking why vaccines are safe. It's just like, what you need to know. Please tell me. Oh shit, here we go. This guy right here, Eric Feigl-Ding. This dude has built a career on COVID. Look, COVID updates since January of 20. Yeah, we know, bro. Fucking highly contagious new variants. Oh my god. The highly contagious new variants are likely contributing to a rise in cases. Oh my god. Like, why did he underline this shit? Like, the whole thing is a headline, bro. Why are you underlining a part of the headline? But anyways, Eric Ding, what a clown. Where's Dr. Liana Wynn? I'm sure she'll be fucking grabbing for masks soon. I did want to take a look at this, though. This is the new variant. Research suggests it's more transmissible than BA2, and here's what you need to know. So apparently this thing's started spreading in the UK. They always seem to be a few months ahead of us in terms of variants. All right, so it's a hybrid of the original Omicron strain and the more infectious BA2 strain that is now supposedly dominant. Keep in mind, they're saying it's more infectious. They're not saying that it's less severe. That's the quiet part that they don't want to say out loud. Generally, these things become less severe as time goes on. They say it's about 10% more transmissible. See, so the transmissibility, deaths are not going up in most places. The transmissibility is what they're going to use as a foundation for restricting the freedoms of every human on the fucking planet. January 19th, it was first detected in the UK, and there's been 600 cases since then, more than 600 cases, so is that less than 700? That's like 2.5 months ago. So, I don't know. That doesn't seem like a huge number for a country the size of the UK. And so here's the part where we're really looking at this, and we are kind of sticking with the hyperreality theme a little bit here. Should you be worried? To make it a simple answer, if you're vaccinated and otherwise healthy, you shouldn't worry about it, says Dr. Andrew Badley. Thank you, Andrew Badley. But here's the next part. If you're not vaccinated or you have comorbidities, there's a cause for concern. So, here you go. And look, while he's a dickhead when it comes to vaccination status, me and Dr. Badley had the same thought here. About 2.5 months later, we're not seeing many cases. Or at least it hasn't exploded. It's funny. Why are you talking about it then, dude? Like, it really doesn't need to be that big of a deal. And so there's kind of another genre of hyperreality, and it kind of like blends over into the subject of transhumanism and just technology generally, but we're definitely rapidly approaching the singularity. The moment when biology fuses with technology. If I was doing a video feed right now, I would pull up Klaus Schwab talking about how the fourth industrial revolution is the blending of your mind and technology. Whether you take gene editing, like the mRNA vaccine, or you have a Neuralink. I don't think Klaus Schwab has talked about Neuralink in particular, and my German accent is kind of shitty, but sorry. So you've probably seen a commercial for like Whoop or one of these other products that claims to track your sleep. You basically wake up in the morning, and then up until 5 years ago, for thousands and thousands of years, you'd wake up in the morning, and you'd feel a range of conditions. You'd either feel good or bad, but you could drill down into it and put it on a scale of 1 to 10. But it's always, for the most part, been an issue that people managed themselves in their own minds. Now, we're supposed to use technology to statistically analyze our sleep based on movement and heart rate and all this other shit. And I'm not saying that there's not validity to the quantification of sleep quality. What I am saying is that if someone gets in the habit of every day waking up and looking at their phone or their Fitbit or their Apple Watch to tell them how they slept, eventually they're going to be shifting the responsibility for their emotional state onto a device. And I think that's worrisome. I think the idea that you're looking to a device to tell you how you're feeling is just going to have some negative effects. When I was growing up, and I'm sure for a while before that, mood rings were kind of a gimmicky thing. Obviously, nobody took them particularly seriously, and it only took you a little bit to figure out that this thing's going to change different colors, and it doesn't matter what my mood is. So we kind of knew that was a joke, but we've kind of got the real thing here, actually. It's not that one. It's this one. Apparently, it's really expensive, too. Let's see how much it is. It's $300. So for $300, this ring, you put it on, and it's going to measure your sleep quality. What are they? Let's see. It offers around-the-clock monitoring, right? So it uses an infrared LED sensor. It tracks your sleep quality, duration, and other factors, and produces a personalized sleep score. The ring was also one of the top performers in the same 2020 study when it came to accurately determining wakefulness and being asleep, though it too wasn't very accurate at estimating deep sleep. So even, there's limits to the quantification, obviously, of sleep quality, because what they're doing is just taking a few key performance indicators, which is a corporate-ass term that we'll see again in a few minutes here, and they are just kind of like building you a score for your sleep based on that. So, again, it's not like the worst thing ever, but, imagine going through your day and then you have some frustrating shit happen in the morning and then your mood gets thrown off and you think, fuck, like my phone told me that I slept well. This doesn't make sense. And I was looking for something specific, so I typed in, how is my mood today, Vice? Because in addition to sleep, they're also doing these things for people's moods. So like literally the mood ring thing. And here's where the KPI term is going to come back into play. It's very corporate. It's the type of thing that middle management uses to track the minions. But what we're going to do is take a look at what they're offering. So they literally, for one, these are fucking adults that we're talking about. Adults working in office places and other places that they probably, I would imagine that if you've got a dope, sick fucking job and you really love what you do and you get to, expend whatever creative or physical energy you have each day and you get to, build a nice life. I would imagine if you're in that situation, you're probably not being required to tap a smiley face or a sad face based on how you feel every day. If you're at a fucking retail store or some shit like that, then you're more likely to have to deal with stuff like this. And so this is a fun way to tap into your employee mood. And by the way, this is native advertising, essentially. Actually, would it be native advertising? It's on their own website, so it's kind of just a write-up that they're doing. It's a blog post that they're doing themselves, but nonetheless, a fun employee mood survey, track progress. So when it comes to measuring employee mood, most leaders think of too many questions and slow feedback loops. And so their solution to this is it's too complex. There's too many questions, right? Because nothing's complex about humans, right? Like if you're trying to track the mood of tens or hundreds of different people, you need to be able to evaluate all of them on the same scale of mood, right? So how was your day? The SEL Pax is a physical device that hangs at the exit door, and it asks employees, how was your day? And they're supposed to press the red or the green smiley button. So yeah, you can kind of see how this shit can go off the rails a little bit. But this is actually the opposite of what I was saying before a little bit. Here, they're forcing employees to, an employee could really like 8 aspects of what they did that day, and then the other 2 aspects, if we assume that there's 10 for some random reason, maybe they don't like them as much, but they're not getting the opportunity within the SEL Pax score to deliver any kind of meaningful feedback. But their bosses, if they have a complaint, their bosses will look at this score and say, well, look, the mood at the office on the day that you're talking about was 90%. 90% of people had a good day. So if you had a bad day, then maybe we need to get rid of you. That's the type of shit that you're going to start to see as a result from things like this. This article seems to be skeptical of a lot of these devices, and I just thought it was important to at least show that the people at the Next Web here are looking at this stuff from a skeptical perspective. For instance, you could even see some of the other articles they've got about how muting your mic doesn't stop big tech from recording audio and other things like that. I did, honestly, the reason I even kept this article up, I'm not going to go into it, but I just thought this was hilarious. Perfect Shutterstock image of just what could he be looking at? I don't know if he probably just matched with a baddie on Tinder, but he's having a good time. And then I did want to finish up just talking about the last layer of, not the last layer, but just an additional layer of this. And as always, here at Regime Watch, we worry about the kids. And so I was telling a couple buddies of mine who have kids recently about social emotional learning. And after 2 years of having kids wear masks during periods of time when they're supposed to be developing social skills and a sense of evaluating people's moods and mannerisms and facial expressions, now when kids have emotional distress and when kids aren't getting along with their peers as well because they've been interacting with them solely over fucking Zoom for like a year and a half or whatever, now they're going to come in and say the only way that we can help these kids out with their emotions is through social emotional learning. And so you see people like Bethany Hill here, who's I'm sure she had her Ukrainian flag here a long time before the war started. I'm sure she is she's the lifer. She's been with Ukraine since the early 90s, no doubt about it. These people, as always, want to target your schools. And building emotional intelligence begins in public schools with 4 and 5-year-olds. It's called social emotional learning. So that's what she's saying. And this is obvious bullshit. It's true that social interactions take place a lot at school, but the idea that building emotional intelligence begins in public schools with 4 and 5-year-olds is complete horse shit. It starts at home with parents who are engaged, helping their children interact normally and be able to evaluate other people's moods normally. And that's why, if you have some fucking alcoholic father who's raging around the house constantly smacking people, the child's emotional intelligence is going to be harmed because they're going to assume people are ready to fly off the handle at any given moment. But yeah, so here's what her response to the idea that some children have a suboptimal home life is going to be to say that actually building emotional intelligence begins in public schools. And what's funny too is, like, what about private schools? Like, if a kid goes to private school, are they somehow not getting the lessons? Like, Jesus. Yeah, here you go. I mean, you do get people saying emotional intelligence begins at home, etc., and that's good. This lady. I mean, this lady's got 60,000 followers. Look at this. Social emotional learning. And then she's also got diversity, equity, and inclusion. That's a surprising combination, isn't it? Wow. Wow. Oh, lots of kids come to school with their invisible backpacks weighted with struggles. So doesn't that indicate that at home there's some sort of emotional and social environment that is affecting them even before they come to school, Bethany? It seems like your arguments are a little bit contradictory. Anyway, so here is social emotional learning. So this is in action, right? I'll show you real quick. This is on a .gov website. So this is official shit. This is not some bullshit that hasn't been verified. This is a study. It's called Using a Survey of Social and Emotional Learning in School Climate to Inform Decision Making. And this is basically an organization doing some study as a justification for charging a bunch of money for social emotional learning bullshit. But I think what's important is just taking a quick look at some of their key terms. So the one thing I definitely wanted to look at is the demographic variables. So they're including students' gender, special education status, English learner status, grade level, and race and ethnicity, as well as the District of Columbia and public schools classification of whether a student is at risk. So these are factoring into kids' social emotional learning levels, their race or ethnicity. So these people have different scores associated with different races. Just be aware of that. And so you can see the things that they're trying to like measure and shit. They're measuring perseverance, self-management, self-efficacy, social awareness, expectations, a sense of belonging, satisfaction. These are all aspects of life that should primarily be the concern of a parent. Not necessarily the rigorous expectations in the classroom specifically. But yeah, this is part of a larger movement and push to sever the ties between parents and their children. And these people make it quite obvious when they say things like, look, we got to get to these kids at age 4 or 5, and it starts in public schools. They know that there's a large movement of homeschooling going on right now. All right, so this is the McGraw-Hill website. You'll recognize them from the back of most textbooks that you may have used in high school. 87% of parents believe SEL is important in helping children navigate today's world. So, again, humanity has been going on for a long time now. And up until now, people were able to make shit work without their teachers manipulating their emotions with surveys and then, trying to help them deal with whatever emotional stress they might be dealing with. And this is an interesting one as well, right? So the types of schools and districts that have partnered with community organizations for social emotional learning support, right? So 18% of the affluent, this is actually kind of weird, it's not adding up to anywhere near 100 types of schools in it. Okay, so I'm thinking they're saying 18% of affluent schools have partnered with social emotional learning organizations, 22% of middle class, and 33% of lower income. So if you know that these people are trying to bring personal development that should be taking place in the home into the school, which situations are going to require more interaction from these social emotional learning support professionals. It's not that they require them, but it's that they have a use case that they can offer. And so, of course, you're going to see many more of them in lower income neighborhoods where the kids' home lives are not as stable. So they're coming to school in a less emotionally stable state that's reflected. It's a reflection of their home life. And then that kid who is in a lower economic rung, they could be that kid that I hypothetically referred to earlier, right? I mean, they're in a lower income neighborhood or whatever because the dad is an alcoholic who just smacks everyone when he gets home from his job, and he's not he's not doing shit for the family. And so when you get these kids that have they reflect their home life at school through some sort of suboptimal emotional state, these teachers are going to have them fill out a survey, and then they're going to take the kid aside and they're going to say, "Hey, little Jimmy, you only said you were feeling 3 smiley faces out of 10 smiley faces today. Why's that?" And then Jimmy's going to be like, "Well, my dad was beating my mom and I didn't really know what to do about it and I feel really scared." And they're going to go, "Well, Jimmy, I mean, that's because of the patriarchy." And they're going to have some ideological bullshit, that they use and attempt to help little Jimmy deal with this issue. And it's just like, report the physical abuse, and teach the kid math. Like, do your fucking job. It's ridiculous. And then they're talking about the educators that are familiar with it. So there's been an 11% jump in educators familiar with social and emotional learning. So what's funny is that, this SEL stuff is basically just quantifying emotions, as I kind of said earlier. And it kind of reminds me a lot of what's happened with basketball. Basketball has, in my opinion, turned into what I sometimes refer to as statsketball, where, I don't think there's anything wrong with the three-point shot, but, once people start not using their eyes and relying too much on analytics, you get into a situation where you're not really playing the game of basketball anymore. You're playing a sport that's a lot like basketball, but people are behaving far differently in the game because someone somewhere in a room has, done some really higher math and determined that is going to be a better outcome statistically one way. It's like if you could see some fucking guy who jumps out of the gym and has a great jump shot and great court vision and can dribble the ball really well, you're going to get some dude like, yeah, but what's his usage percentage versus his advanced win shares? And it's just like, don't overthink it. A lot of this ideological stuff is about getting you to interpret your body. We have eyes and ears and touch and smell and taste, and we've got a handful of different senses with which to measure stimuli in our environment. And every time you take a piece of technology and you give the job of your senses to that piece of technology, you're just deviating further from objective reality, and you're letting someone else's ideology and worldview be a prism through which you look at yourself. And let's just finish up real quick and take a quick glance at an actual survey. So this is just on SurveyMonkey, and I found it by typing in social emotional learning survey for students. And this is apparently a parent view, so I kind of do wonder if there's a different thing for the student view, but it's still addressed to students. So they're basically saying, "Dear student, you're being asked to participate in a survey. Ask how you think about your school and classroom environment. Your answers will be combined, so blah, 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 blah. You can always ask your teacher for help if you are having trouble understanding a question. Don't have to answer any." All right, let's just take a look at the type of shit that they're asking kids. And to be frank, this one could be really like actually school focused. Because like all things, there's, if you don't go crazy off the rails with it, obviously there's value in figuring out how kids feel at school. It's just when you try to use that as an opportunity to pry apart their home and their school life, then you're getting into some nasty territory. So this one definitely seems to be mostly straight up school stuff. I get my schoolwork done, I keep track of my assignments, I work hard, I feel comfortable asking questions. That's all good. I kind of want to see if it gets off the rails at any point. Yeah, see, so this is where I start to just get a little bit, I don't know, I feel like I belong in this school. So, we're talking about public schools, right? That's what Bethany told us. SEL begins in public schools. So the kid who's going to this public school, it's like, what is belonging? You're going to ask kids, I feel like I belong in this school. If it's a public school, it's not as if it's some like super higher level academic institution where they're going to be feeling hella dumb or something like that compared to their peers, especially now when the schools have strategically gotten rid of so many like advanced track classes and things like that. If a student answers this question with a disagree, what is a teacher to say? Here you go. So now we're getting into the emotional shit, and it's not about, none of this is a measurement of the school. In college, at the end of every semester or quarter or whatever, a lot of time you'll get an opportunity to, basically they give you a survey about the professor because they want to have feedback. And so all the questions on those surveys are about the professor. None of them are about your own mindset for the most part. And so I try to understand other students' points of view. I think about other students' feelings. I get along well with students who are different from me. So you can see how things are starting to potentially get off the rails here. I get along well with students who are different from me. You take some little kid and they say they disagree with that. Like, do we even need to guess what type of shit a teacher is going to say to some little white kid who says he doesn't get along well with students who are different from them? Sounds like an immediate opportunity to launch into some critical race bullshit about how he's inherently racist. I remain calm even when someone is bothering me. See, the postmodernists only view things in terms of power dynamics. So they can't assess someone's answer to this question without knowing the demographics of the people involved. People of all different cultural backgrounds, races, ethnicities, and abilities get along well at my school. Yeah, no room for perverted ideology there. So, anyways, it's not as if too much of this is like some hardcore smoking gun, but I just thought it would be useful to dive into what they're actually looking at. But yeah, I'm going to finish up there for today. Just wanted to take a not so quick look at a few different subjects. And I kind of like doing these little Twitter scroll style videos. But ultimately, though, the main takeaway, I think, for today is top-down decision-making is always going to lead to crazy bullshit if it comes from the government, a la Sri Lanka. And then also, just, really, we got to get society back to a place where people are comfortable trusting their own senses rather than depending on a news channel or some shit like that to help them determine how they're feeling on a given day, or what the important issues are in the world. What the important issues are in the world is something that each person gets to decide for themselves. And so, for people who don't want to be like politically engaged or something like that, that's totally fine. And it's just important, I think, that people still, even if that's the case, have the ability to, assess things relatively objectively without needing a fucking smartwatch. So.